So we're going to be discussing James's view that for many people who are in the situation where they think their evidence doesn't tell them that God does exist and their evidence doesn't tell them that God doesn't exist, they should go ahead and believe in God, that for many people that would be the appropriate choice. We need to see what there's some sort of background terminology that we need to understand in order to really get what his view is and his argument for that conclusion. So that's what I'm going to be discussing in this video. So the terminology. So first of all, just the word hypothesis just means a possible belief. A live hypothesis is, and a hypothesis might be live for you and not for me, and it might be live for me now and not live for me later. It's something that appeals as a real possibility to me right now. It's something that I could really imagine believing, that I think at least has some chance of being true. If it's not like that, then I don't believe it. So a dead hypothesis for me would be Zeus causes thunderstorms. I do not believe in the Greek god Zeus, and I do not believe that the Greek god Zeus causes thunderstorms. A live possibility would be that humans will land on Mars within 20 years. That's certainly possible. I don't think it's guaranteed, but it could happen. Okay, an option. Well, it's a choice, and in particular, we're thinking about choices about belief. So an option would be to believe a hypothesis or not believe it, or to believe a hypothesis and to deny it. Two ways you might not believe a hypothesis. One would be to say it's false. So if a hypothesis is God exists, then one way to not believe it is to say no, God doesn't exist. Another way to not believe it is just to not believe it, to be neutral, and to neither believe nor deny. So I've got hypothesis, which is a possible belief. Live hypothesis for you at a given time is something that at that time you could imagine, so yeah, there's a good chance that could be true. And an option is choosing, is you're considering how to relate to a hypothesis. Am I going to believe it? Am I not going to believe it? Am I going to deny it? So there are kinds of options that James talks about, and the reason he's going to talk about that is he wants to say in the end, in some situations, you can go, your beliefs, it's okay to go beyond your evidence in forming beliefs, but he wants to say that that's not always the case, and there are only specific kinds of situations where it's okay to go beyond your evidence in forming beliefs, and the way he's going to say in what situations is by saying it's when you're confronted with this kind of specific kind of option, that then it's okay to go beyond your evidence, and that's in fact going to be the case with the belief in God. So we need to see what are these kinds of options. So the first contrast we have is between live and dead options. So a live option, humans will leave the solar system. Another live option would be humans will not leave the solar system. Like, these are, again, let's say live for me right now. I can imagine at some point in the future, yes, humans will leave the solar system, but we might not. Maybe we won't survive long enough, or we'll decide that it doesn't make sense to try to do that. It's too long, and we never make it to another solar system, and or another, yeah. So I don't know, but those are both live. A dead option would be that humans originated on the moon, because we didn't. We know we didn't, and again, that Zeus lives, or Zeus creates thunderstorms. Dead option. Okay, so that's the first contrast, is live or dead. The second contrast is going to be between avoidable and forced. So what are avoidable? So these are going to be options, actually action options. But so you have the option when you leave the house to take your umbrella, or to not take your umbrella. But you can actually, you don't have to, and then you think, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to take my umbrella or not? But you can actually say, well, actually, I'm not going to do either of those things. I'm not going to leave my house at all. Or say, do you love me or do you hate me? Well, maybe I don't either. I don't have a strong attitude towards you at all. So I don't have to choose one of the two options. Or say, my theory is true, my theory is false. My theory that God exists is true, my theory that God exists is false. The theory of evolution is true, or the theory of evolution is false. Well, you can avoid choosing one of those two choices. You can say, I'm not going to have an opinion about the matter. So those are all avoidable options. The options, you can say, I'm actually not going to do either of those. I can get out of this choice you presented me with. Another avoidable option would be believe that God exists or believe that God doesn't exist. You think, no, I'm just not going to believe one way or the other. I'm not going to take a stand on God's existence. But there are options that are forced. So if you're on a jury, in a criminal trial, then you're going to either vote to find the defendant guilty or you're not. There's no third option. Now, when you vote to find the defendant not guilty, what you're saying is, all you're necessarily saying is there wasn't enough evidence to convict the person. You're not saying that they were innocent. You're saying they weren't that I couldn't find them guilty. So, but you are doing that, and you don't have a choice. You have to say, either I'm going to find them guilty or I'm not going to find them guilty. I'm doing one of those two things. You're in a relationship with somebody, and you have the choice. You can either believe that the person loves me, or you can not believe that they love you. You might you might say, I'm not sure, or you might think, no, they really dislike me, but the choice between believing that they love me and not believing that they love me, that's a forced option. You're going to have the belief or you're not. And so with God, then the forced option is believe that God exists or don't. You can't get out of that. You can get out of saying, does God exist or doesn't God exist? You can say, you can avoid that option, but you cannot avoid the option of saying either believing that God exists or not believing that God exists. Either you do believe or you don't believe. And there are different ways of not believing, as we'll talk about, but either you do or you don't. Okay, so we have the live-dead contrast, we have the forced avoidable contrast, and the last contrast we're going to have is the trivial momentous contrast. So some examples of trivial options. Should I kiss my spouse right now? Well, it's nice. I should do it, maybe, but it's not the end of the world if I don't. Should I see the Avengers movie tomorrow? Well, same thing. Should I dye my hair? I could, and some of these, like this one, for example, like I do it and I don't like it, I can change it back or wait for it to grow back. But on the other hand, there are lots of momentous options. So suppose Elon Musk of Tesla comes up to me and says, we're going to go to Mars. Do you want to come? Well, that would be a big choice to make, one way or the other. Should I marry this person? That's a big choice, one way or another. And there are beliefs that go with these. So is my going to Mars a good idea? I can believe that or not believe that. Would this person be a good spouse? I can believe that or not believe that. Should I vote for a certain candidate? And the related question or belief, would this person be a good representative? Do I have that or not? And these are all important. Maybe you think the last one isn't important because you think your vote doesn't matter, but I disagree with that. But either way, you can see at least the first two are momentous. Okay? So a genuine option is live, it's forced, and it's momentous. It's live, meaning that both the options, either to let's say believe that God exists or not believe that God exists, are both like, I could see that. And so whether or not it's live, it's live is going to depend upon your specific situation. Is it live for you? It's forced. You can't avoid the choice. So you're in a situation where you think there's some reason to think God doesn't exist, and there's also some reason to think to not think that God exists. And you can't avoid this choice. You're going to either believe or you're not. And it really does matter what you choose. Those are the genuine options. And so the genuine religious options. So is belief versus atheism a genuine option? No. It's live for some. The God does exist or God doesn't exist. So it's live for you if you think the evidence doesn't settle the issue. You might think it does. You might think the evidence settles the issue. God doesn't exist. The problem of evil is a powerful argument. Or you might think, no, the design argument or some other argument or some faith experience settles the issue in favor of God's existence. But if you're in the middle, you're like, I'm not sure, then belief versus atheism would be live for you. And it would presumably be momentous. I'll talk a little bit more about why. But it's not forced, because you could say, I'm not going to believe that God doesn't exist, and I'm not going to believe that God doesn't exist. I'm going to have neither of those beliefs, and so it's not a forced choice. But what is forced is belief on the one hand versus either agnosticism or atheism on the other hand. So we have belief in, fundamentally what this comes down to is belief in God on the one hand versus not believing in God on the other. And that is live for some. And it is forced. You cannot avoid that. Either you're going to believe or you're not going to believe. Is it momentous? yeah, it seems like it probably is. Religion makes some big claims. It says the eternal things are the most important things, the better things. They're more important than the particular sort of fleeting pleasures and pains that we experience from day to day. And so we should be more focused on those more eternal things, and that will be better for us. It's not just that they're out there and better, but that you will benefit by connecting with the eternal, by seeing your life and understanding your life and feeling your life in this much bigger perspective. And you'll have what James talks about as an I-thou relationship with the universe. So, like with this mug. It's a mug, it's a thing, it's an object, it's not alive, doesn't have any pleasures or pains or feelings or thoughts. It's just an object. Whereas each of us is a person with a perspective on the world who we relate to as other conscious beings worthy of respect and all sorts of compassion and love and all of that. Well, if you're religious, then in a way you believe the universe, in a certain sense, is a person. The universe is alive and filled with this divine consciousness. And so you're living in a universe that in a way is another person. And that's a very different way from relating to the universe as dead atoms spinning in a void. So these are big differences. And so the choice of believing or not believing in God is going to have a big effect on how you relate to the world, how you relate to your own life, how you relate to other people. So there's a real genuine value proposition in choosing to believe or choosing not to believe. For some people, there's also this, that, at least for some beliefs, that the belief would make a difference to eternal reward or eternal damnation. If you believe, and it's true, you get the eternal reward, but if you don't believe, and then you miss that fact, then eternal damnation. It's not a matter of whether or not I'll survive after death, because you're having belief in God or not. It's not going to make that difference, but it is going to make a difference to the way in which you understand what's happening in your life, and it may make a difference to what happens to you after you die. So it's a big deal. It's a momentous decision, and it's live for some people, and it's forced. You cannot avoid the believe or not believe question. You're going to be on one side or the other. You may not devote much energy to it, but you are right now in one of those two. At one of those two poles, or somewhere along the spectrum in between believing and not believing. You're not off the spectrum. Okay, so with that notion of a genuine option, live, both options are real possibilities for me. Forced, I'm going to have to be in one of those two possibilities or on some spectrum in between them. And 3, momentous, it really matters. Those are the situations where James is going to tell us, actually, you can go beyond your evidence in choosing what to believe. So let's turn to that in the next video.